Called controversial.
I'll keep my freedom, I'll keep my guns, try to keep my money and my religion too.
Now, keep in mind that some of my guests have been approached by Homeland Security or FBI saying, why are you going on the Clay Douglas show?
My message to those guys, if they're listening this morning, is go get a cup of coffee. Maybe you'll learn something.
We both took the same oath, to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I don't recall there being an expiration date on that.
I'm gonna keep my big VA, keep my friends the same, keep the government out of my business, and y'all can keep the change.
He is the free American, Clay Douglas.
We know what we need, we know who to blame.
Catch the Free American Hour, weekdays at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern.
I'll keep the USA and y'all can keep the change.
For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamerican.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-999-8621.
All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Hour. I'm your host, Clay Douglas. And my guest today is MeSah. Let me give you a little introduction to her. Have you been struggling to change your life with little or no results? Well, maybe discovering how to heal, grow, and expand your awareness will provide you the boost you've been searching for. MeSah, spiritual medium clairvoyant, will help you find the missing key to answering your life's unanswerable questions. It's really wonderful to have you on, MeSah. I've got a lot of unanswerable questions.
Well, good. I have some that still haven't been answered too, but I'm working on it.
Now, tell me, first of all, how did you're clairvoyant? How did all this happen? How did this come about? I mean, this is I'm interested to know the development. I've been searching for answers. I mean, that for my whole life. That's what I think we're put here for: find answers. So,
Yeah.
how did you get into this?
Yeah, mine was kind of a long process, Clay. And when I was young, I used to get these overwhelming periods of longing, and I didn't know what it was until much later, and I realized it was longing for a bigger connection to spirit because I didn't have it in my life. So when I was a teenager, late in my teens, I started my own search because I was not getting it through the religion that I was born into. And I just looked into so many different things, and one of the first things I found was the Ascended Masters, and that really started ringing bells for me. But I looked into different gurus and different meditations and different meditation techniques and everything in my search. And through that, little by little, I would find a piece here, a piece there, and it just started propelling me, and I started having a lot of what would be called mystical experiences, and I just kept going. At some point, I developed what I call a direct connection to the spiritual realm and to certain masters who are those that have gone through the earth schoolroom and graduated. They don't have to be here in the physical, but they're alive and well on the inner dimensions. And then I started being able to dialogue with those dimensions, and so it's just been this unfolding, wonderful process, and I'm still in it, and I don't think it's ever going to end.
Well, the Christians out there would go, "Oh, this is New Age. This is and frankly, in my opinion, Christianity and all of the religions are all bullshit. I think that's exactly what Jesus is exactly how you just described it, as an ascended master.
Yeah, and it's really not New Age. This is ancient. It's ancient, and but it was hidden. It was subverted, and the religions that developed didn't want or don't want us to find our own connection, because then they're out of business.
That's right. I've had preachers come up and go, how come we don't see you in church? And I said, well, Father, there's a God talk to you and tell you what to say to your flock. Well, yes. I said, well, me too.
Uh-huh.
You know, so why do I need to come hear your version? I mean, to me, you know, first of all, I believe we are created, and I believe the force that created us, the force that holds the atoms together, that's how he's able to create everything.
Right.
And if you're omniscient and omnipotent, you know everything, you can do anything, then what are you? And the standard answer is God. My answer is bored shitless.
You know, this thing about how the atoms are held together is really exciting, because the quantum physicists sort of broke open what the metaphysical people have known for years, and there's this field that connects everything, and this field of all possibilities. And I work a lot in that field of all. I don't work in it. I open the door to it, and whoever I'm working with then can access that field of all possibility. And the changes that can happen are fantastic. And the quantum physicists are calling it the mind of God, because they don't know what else. It's so big, they don't know what else to call it. But, you know, people have been talking about this forever. And a lot of the ancient people that would talk about it were murdered or killed, because it's supposed to not be public knowledge. But now it's being scientifically proven. And, you know, if science proves it, then the Western world believes it. And if you can't measure it, it must not exist. You know, that kind of mindset.
Science is controlled. I mean, we could create total energy. I mean, everything God gave us is right here. You know, matter of fact, one of the people in my chat room, Lady K, sent me this article where they're just learning that hey, you can take all of that crap out of your toilet and make methane out of it, and power whole cities like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you know, if you're years ago, everything we're doing now with the whole internet and all that'd just been magic, wouldn't it? And to me, magic, the science of magic, is where every religion came from. Every society, from Australia to Africa to the American Indians, all had their shamans, all had their witch doctors, all had their spiritual masters, right?
Yes.
So exactly what's the difference between a witch drawing a circle, lighting incense, and focusing on what she would like to achieve in life, and a Christian on her knees praying to God for a Cadillac? What's the difference?
I would question the intent of what they're after, not the process.
But it's the same process, isn't it?
It really is.
And what is possible here is like people like Edgar Cayce have demonstrated, and of course that ascended master that we refer to as Jesus.
Yep, that's right.
I said, to me, Jesus was he was the first rebel that figured out the problem we got today. How do you fight evil without becoming evil? And of course, they kicked him up. They promoted him to God at the Council of Nicaea about 250 A.D. because they didn't want men like me aspiring to be the kind of man Jesus was.
And you know, his message was, and he even said it, it's even in the Bible, what I do, you will do, and you will do even more than what I do.
Yes.
And also, you know, even as far back as Moses, he said, don't you know that ye are gods? Don't you know God is inside you? And Jesus often said the kingdom of heaven is inside. That's where you find it. You know, don't make me an outer God. Don't make me an idol. You know, the Christian religions basically have made Jesus an idol. That's never what was intended.
This really bothers me. I mean, this is you just touched on the one thing. The Bible tells us not that we don't want to worship idols.
Right.
And so what did they do? They erected a cross, made the cross the instrument of torture that was used to kill Jesus, and they made that your sacred symbol. There's something wrong with that.
Well, the cross is really ancient. It's an ancient symbol, and the vertical line really represents heaven coming down to earth, and the horizontal line represents man, and the middle of that cross is where man and heaven meet. And that's the inner meaning, is why Jesus was put on the cross, because he was that metaphor of heaven being fully realized in man. And they killed that. But that was the metaphor of the cross. And it's very ancient. It's way before the Christians took a hold of it. It's like the swastika.
It was kind of, in other words, it existed before the Jews decided to use it as an instrument of torture.
That's right. Yeah.
Now, I've got questions about this whole biblical thing. Why would God not want Adam and Eve to know the difference between good and evil?
Well, it wasn't God that didn't want that. It was the coming down. At one point we were all in that field of all possibility and knowingness. And somehow it happened that there was a surge of energy that went out. And this happens in very big, long cycles. The energy goes out, and it starts to come down through the different levels of manifestation, which become denser and denser. And then matter starts to coalesce, and forms start to be made. And when you hit the densest level, which is the physical, we are in an experience of duality. So it wasn't that God wanted us to be cut off from him, but when we come into this dense physical realm of opposites, light, cold, light, dark, heat, cold, love, hate, good, evil, that's just how the physical world exists, through the yin-yang, through the duality. Okay? So it's not that God cut us off, it's that we cut us off as we came down through the different planes of existence and came down into that mental realm, and the mind became created and the ego became created. Boom, we're in the world of duality, because the ego wants to judge, and the ego sees things as love, hate, love, fear. Really, fear is the opposite of love, not hate.
I talk a lot about the New World Order, but I've also made a film basically says there is no such a thing as the New World Order. It's been around as long as recorded history, and probably before that. I mean, I think that we as humans, we got human footprints beside dinosaur footprints. So somehow science is a little bit screwed up, and the whole theory of evolution, I think, is kind of bullshit, don't you?
Well, I do. There was Atlantis, there was Lemuria, there were souls on Atlantis, there were souls on Lemuria, there was a continent before Lemuria. There's been so much life on this planet for so many millions of years. And, slowly I think that the scientists are unearthing things like human footprints alongside of dinosaurs. And again, if science says it's right, we scratch our head and go, oh, gee, okay. But yeah, I agree. And I think that there's always been this realm of opposites, light, darkness. They're in opposition, but they balance each other in some sort of odd way. They keep the physical world manifesting. But the New World Order, yeah, it's not so new. There's been so much interference with how we were supposed to develop in a pure sense, and that has to do with alien interference. It has to do with the scientists on Atlantis interfering with our genetic makeup, and all kinds of things that have interfered with how we were originally intended, coming down through these different layers. So there's so many things that go on at once. It's hard to pinpoint just one.
Now, somebody on the chat room said something about giant footprints and skeletons, giant skeletons out there, and you mentioned aliens. I'm not sure, you know, that we're not the aliens. I mean, maybe we existed 100,000 years ago. Maybe we went out into space. Maybe that technology that we see in UFOs and all that has been here for 100,000 years.
You know, in Atlantis, they talk about they had spaceships, and they knew how to use the energy in the air, so to speak, the electromagnetic energy, and that's how they powered their spaceships. Now, whether they went to other planets or not, I don't know, but they certainly used them to get from one place to another on the Earth, so they might have very well had the technology.
An Iranian scientist has just invented a UFO, or a ship capable of traveling through space that functions pretty much with the same characteristics as a UFO. So maybe we're getting to the point where we're rediscovering that.
Well, that could be, you know, and there's all the information about the aliens that have come here and have made agreements with our government for trading people for technology and all that stuff. And you know, you and I talked a bit about the history of the Semites, and my understanding is that there was a planet in the solar system that blew itself up. And the people on the planet were fighting, and many of them got in their spaceships, came to this planet, landed in the Middle East, and guess who they are?
The gods.
The gods, but they're the Semites. And they came to this planet, brought their wars with them, and then created it again on this planet, and they're what's called a laggard evolution. They were not keeping up with the evolutionary path that they were supposed to be on. Got stuck in all of this warring and factions and brought it here, and are now, you know, endangering our planet because of the wars. So the Semites really have come from the same, you know, they've come from the same source. Not the Israelites, but they came from the same source. But they hated each other. So here we are in the middle of their battle. It's not really ours.
Now, tell me about what you do here. You said you've done remote healing. You've done you do spiritual counseling.
Yep.
And how does that work? How do people approach you? And what are some of the what's some of your accomplishments?
I do a lot of remote healing. In fact, I mentioned that to you previously, that I'm starting groups for veterans to do remote healing with at an extremely low cost. I just want them to have an investment in the process, and anybody can reach me through my website, which is MeSah, MESAH.weebly.com, through the contact page on that website. Remote healing is, since they're in the world of quantum, there's no time or space. You can heal just as easily without being in the presence of the person as you can as being in the presence of the person. And I do a lot of that. One of my more recent, I hate to say they're my accomplishments because they're not, it's what works through me, I have nothing to do with it, is with a woman who had been attacked by a witch and had a curse put on her. And when she called me, she was losing her business. She was many thousands of dollars in debt. Her physical body was collapsing. She couldn't move her neck. And it was getting worse and worse. And we worked together for, I can't remember, maybe an hour. She was in a different country than I am in. And that curse was lifted and she came out of it. And she's thriving now and doing very well, physically very good, making a lot of money, and her life changed.
That's interesting. You know, this is a possibility that I really haven't explored. You know, was a curse put on me. I mean, you've got a copy of my Mystery Babylon. That's got the whole history of the last 8 years, the attempt on my life, drugging me for 3 months for 3 broken ribs. You know, and they weren't successful. I mean, I am still very healthy. You know, I'm still in pretty good shape. You know, I went through a T-bone motorcycle accident that I was hit hard enough to roll my motorcycle 3 times, and yet I didn't break a leg. I saw a picture of the bike, and both my roll bars on the bike were smashed flat. How could I have an accident like that and not and be able to still be able to walk?
You're still supposed to be here. You've got work to do. It's not your time. But this issue about curses, you know, now this woman had a formal curse from a witch put on her, but there's lots of ways that people curse each other, and it can be through bad thoughts, it can be through intent. It doesn't have to be a formal kind of ritual that somebody does it through. So it's true that in that quote-unquote curses, yeah, there's certainly people out there that are not intending your well-being.
Yes, I certainly believe that.
Yeah, and that's a kind of a curse.
Now, our veterans, you know, more of our veterans, more Vietnam vets, the people that went over to Vietnam, volunteered about the same time I did. I didn't go to Vietnam, but they tried to kill me before I got there, and the more veterans from Vietnam vets have committed suicide since they got back to this country than were killed over in Vietnam. Now, to me, that's a national tragedy. But I've said, you know, this whole thing about drugging the veterans, you know, where they've got PSTD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, and so we need to drug them down. I don't agree with that, and I think if you've been to Vietnam, if you've been to Iraq, if you've been to Afghanistan, and you don't have post-traumatic stress syndrome, then there's something wrong with you. That's when you're really sick, to me.
You know, I can't imagine what they experience, and I've heard veterans talk about what they experience, and I almost agree. How can you not? Here's the good news. When we have an experience like that, and we view it from a particular perspective, and we take in a belief about what that was about or what that is, and also how we are related to it, we get stuck in the energy of it, okay? Once we're stuck in the energy of it, we don't have a way to bring ourselves out of it, because PTSD is really in that fight or flight mode. But when we do a spiritual healing, which has to do with healing the morphic field of that experience. A morphic field is a particular energy that has been fed for so long. It gets to be very big and very large. And when we connect with it, we're not able to pull ourselves out of it. But when we can get into the quantum field, we can pull ourselves out of it, and we can bring in a different morphic field of energy that will then give us an opportunity to have a different experience. No drugs, yay. All we have to do is open up to it. That's the good news.
All right, let's see if we got a few more minutes here in this segment, and then we'll get the second half of this. But let's see if we've got a caller on the line.
Okay.
Hello, caller from the 918. Is this Ann?
Yeah, hi, Clay.
Hello. I thought you might like to say hello to MeSah. This is one of my regular listeners. This is Ann.
Hi, Ann.
I had not heard some of these things. I'm really glad you're on there. I learn a lot listening to Clay's show. What is the morphic field?
A morphic field is an energy field that has been created through certain perceptions of enough people that it's sort of taken on its own life. You know, energy, like attracts like, so to speak. So if I put if I'm in fear, I attract the morphic field of fear. That morphic field is fear of all the people that have experienced fear. And so then I attract that to me. So they're fields of energy, so to speak. They're grids and force fields of energy.
Okay, yeah, I understand.
And by the way, let me interrupt just a second here, Ann, because that morphic field is what a lot of your Patriot talk show hosts, I watch your television, what the whole bankster people behind this whole New World Order crap is about, is to make you afraid, very, very afraid. They feed on fear, and that's how they gain their power. If you're afraid of somebody, they can sense that, and they know that.
That's right. And they feed off of that.
Yes, and that's where your legend from of vampires and you know,
that's right,
everything comes from.
That's right. You're right on about that. They can really steal your energy. Once they have you in that state of mind, they can steal your energy. That's what they want. You know, really the war is going on on other dimensions, and it has to do with energy. Where do we what do we give our energy to? Who's feeding off of us, and how can we stop and change that?
Is it what you put your attention on? Is that where you're putting your energy?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So what you focus on.
Yes.
All right.
And that's, you know, I've got my favorite definition of love. You know, people have done experiments with this. They've got love. You know, written on paper. It changes the molecular vibrations of the water, something like that. And love is the definition that I enjoy. Is level. Love is your level of vibrational energy.
Exactly. Exactly. I have experienced spiritual love, which is a totally different vibration than what human love is. It's much bigger. It's much more blissful. It's much more. It's just bigger.
Unconditional.
Oh, yes. You're right, Ann. It's totally unconditional. Hard for us humans to do that.
I've recently got some CDs and I've got one with the theta brainwave frequencies, and I've learned that I can use it to just before I go to bed at night, and I can say some positive things like God is my supply. Every day in every way I get better and better, and things like that. And one day I noticed while listening to that, I didn't have headphones on, but while listening to it, it was in the evening, and a fire truck came in next door in an ambulance, and I noticed that their flashing lights were slightly out of sync with the theta beat. And
Boy,
now there was a physical thing that happens to some people that with flashing lights they have epileptic seizures.
That's right.
So if they could synchronize those flashing lights to synchronize with one brainwave, rather than be slightly off, it wouldn't happen. It would help people.
That's right. You've just opened a door to so much that's going on. I want to tell you this though, and before I forget, here's something you might try. The name of God in us, which resides behind the physical heart, looks like a little flame, is I am that I am. So when you make a positive statement, when you say I am abundance, you are saying God in me is abundance, and God